even after the Constitutional Court ruled against him. We're joined on the line by retired Justice of the Constitutional Court, Justice Johann Kriegler. Mr. Kriegler, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show. Mr. Kriegler, good morning to you. Yes, I think we are having a bit of a problem trying to get hold of the former Chief Justice. He is online, but for some reason or the other, we seem to be having a bit of a technical issue. But what is clear, and when one looks at the danger that is associated with the defiance of the former president of the country to the rule of law. Now, the key question here is, where does this take us? On what path does this actually lead us to? Because when one looks at the current saga of Zuma versus the Zondo Commission versus the Constitutional Court, it certainly has got certain ominous messages, and one of them being a clear constitutional crisis in the country. And at the end of the day, it is not only about the defiance, but the question we need to ask is, who are we trying to who are we trying to actually fool? Because when one looks at this defiance, and when one looks at it in terms of the flagrant violation of the Constitutional Court and South Africa's Constitution, the key question here is the judiciary. Where does this lead the judiciary? And we've seen over and over again where the judiciary has come under a fire, and politicians in particular see the judiciary as a fair game. And we've seen it with a number of politicians over and over again when the judiciary obviously, has to make a decision, or they issue a ruling, or they issue a verdict. And we find that these come under question, particularly from politicians. And we do have Justice Johann Kriegler, the retired Justice of the Constitutional Court, online right now. Mr. Kriegler, good morning to you, sir, and welcome to the show.
Good morning to you, and good morning to your listeners.
Right, upfront, this defiance by the former president of the rule of law, and in particular, we're looking at the Constitutional Court. And you, sir, having been with the Constitutional Court, retired justice at this point in time, and looking at where we are as a democracy in this country, and looking at politicians in particular, and politicians in terms of how they look at the judiciary, but more importantly, when it comes to open defiance, as we are seeing in the case of the former president.
Well, I said some time ago at the Ahmed Kasrada Foundation that it's clear that over the last 10, 15, 20 years, the executive has gone rogue and the legislature has gone to sleep, and the judiciary has been the only arm of state that has really been doing its job. I adhere to that. It is still a serious indication that Parliament did not watch the presidency. The party as a whole didn't watch the presidency. And the suggestion that the Guptas were the source of our undoing has been proved to be wrong. It was indeed a much wider conspiracy against us, and the Guptas were not the inventors, they were merely a tool used in this state capture venture. The judiciary did its job. It does its job only as well as it is allowed to do, and it did it as well as it was allowed to do. It is still trying to do so.
Yes. Now, I think what is important is what you're saying is in terms of what it is allowed to do and what it is not allowed to do. And for far too long, Mr. Kriegler, is we have seen South Africa, we have been boasting as having one of the best constitutions in the world. And we've been proud. We take pride in the constitution of the country. Now, this is now a critical test. as far as the Constitution is concerned, and particularly in light of the ruling of the Constitutional Court with regards to the former president?
Certainly, but a constitution is a document, and a document does nothing. It is to the extent that we, the people, make the constitution work that we do have the right to claim that we have the best constitution in the world. The best constitution stuck away in a cupboard and being ignored by everybody is useless. It's worse than useless. It's a deception. It's a fraud. We must make the constitution work. It calls for honest women and men to see to it that they stick by the rules of the game, that they do not put up secret compartments in the state establishment to benefit themselves or their own grouping. And when we do discover that, to deal with it fiercely, ruthlessly in terms of the Constitution, to weed it out. But we have not done that. We are still not doing that. We're watching in horror as the Zondo Commission unearths more and more indications of how the state apparatus was abused. The Constitution was there, but people were circumventing it. And it is up to us now, as a concerted people, to re-establish the integrity, the discipline of the Constitution.
Also, Mr. Kriegler, in this particular instance, what we are seeing is a clear test. And this test is the relationship between our executive branch of government and the judiciary, which is now under the spotlight. And sometimes, it is very, very noticeable in terms of the silence of the executive branch of government, the ANC-led government, to actually come out in defense of the judiciary, because daily we are seeing more and more of this open defiance against the judiciary featuring more prominently.
Yes, certainly. And at this particular stage, one would hope that both the executive and the legislature make plain to the world and to themselves that we are a law-abiding country living under our Constitution, and in which the judiciary, as the referee of the political game, is respected by all players.
Yes, and also when one looks at this whole situation as far as Jacob Zuma is concerned, because his argument has been that his constitutional rights as a citizen of South Africa has been taken away by none other than the Constitutional Court with the ruling that had taken place. Now, this obviously leaves somewhat of a dilemma at the end of the day, because on the one hand, he's talking about constitutional rights, but at the same time, in open defiance of the Constitutional Court in its ruling.
There's no dilemma. On the one hand, you have breathtaking impertinence of a man who has undermined the Constitution by devious cunning for a decade, to now try to call on us to respect the Constitution. He is the underminer of the Constitution. It is a deception. It's a false claim. He has repudiated the Constitution. He has refused to obey the rules. His claim that the Constitutional Court has undermined his rights is only a complaint that he has lost a court case. His case was argued before the Constitutional Court fully and competently long before this last occasion. He cannot now claim, because he has taken the South the last time round and refused to go and appear before the Constitutional Court, he now puts up a complaint that he's not getting justice there. That's simply not true. When the Zondo Commission took him to the Constitutional Court, he refused to participate, and he now wants to complain about the decision. That is a fraudulent attitude, a dishonest attitude,
yes,
and an unconstitutional attitude.
I think one of the biggest concerns at this point in time is what actually happens next in the face of this defiance by the former president. And if he does get away with it, and what sort of precedent is this likely to have for the country? What sort of consequences, in your opinion?
Let me say this. We have overcome greater challenges than this. We managed to avert a bloody revolution by courage and common sense on the part of our leaders and fortitude and loyalty on the part of the people generally. We managed to pull off a miracle in 1991, 92, 93, 94. We can certainly survive this challenge to the survival of our Constitution. We will do so again by wise leadership and loyal following of the loyal South African citizens who will say, this is the law, this is the Constitution, we must follow it without fear, without favor, without prejudice. Those who defy the law must be dealt with according to the law.
Yes, and just finally, looking at the political reality at on the ground at the moment, where the sentiment is some people are more equal than others. How do we overcome this?
My goodness, that's not a current sentiment. It's a sentiment that has been with us for 300 years. We have only for the last 25 years, 26 years, been actively working against it. We have not worked against it. We have not tried to remedy it sufficiently, energetically, and determinedly. It's a long-term thing. The real problem in this country is the mass of the underclass, unemployed, desperately poor. There is no party that is disinterested in them, not the ANC, not the EFF, not the DA. Those are the people who are disadvantaged. Those are the people for whom the country should be exerting itself. At the moment, under the COVID restraints, it is very difficult, but at the same time, I think the government in all its forces and all of its three arms of state has been given an opportunity to make an agonizing reappraisal of how we have done over the last 26 years, and to see that the policies that have been proclaimed have not been implemented, that the rising number of unemployed youngsters is getting more and more of a problem. It is a long-term effort, but it must be started. We have not really seriously addressed it in the last 26 years.
Well, Justice Johann Kriegler, thank you very much for that and for your time with us this morning here on Salam Media on News and Views. Please take care and all the best to you, sir.
You're very welcome and have a good day, you and your listeners.
Justice Johann Kriegler, retired Justice of the Constitutional Court, with us this morning. We come back, we're going to be taking a look at 100 years since the end of the Osmani Khilafah.